Hi everyone, I'm Stephen Ward, and I just got off of the Skype call with Adam Czarnecki, and I have to say it's gold. It's just absolute gold. This is going to be really useful for job seekers in particular. In the last video I did, I know we were more focused on business and setting up homestays and things like that. But for this one, we're really honing in on how do you get a job to provide for your family. And Adam is both a successful repat story, like many of us, almost all of us. He lived in Korea for several years before moving back to Canada. But more than that, he got into the HR industry and is now establishing his career in the HR industry. And he's already been very generous as a member of the Repat Network by sharing some of his videos he does on the job market, and in particular his video about his Korea story is very impactful, right? Because he talks about how he was put into this situation he didn't expect, and he ended up kind of taking the reins, becoming the head teacher after like 2 months on the job and never having taught before in his life, and he really made it work. And he uses that experience. He learned a lot, and even today, more than 10 years later, it's still impactful on his career. So you definitely got to check that video. That's a must watch. But also, this video is a must watch. So please dive into it. Don't be afraid to reach out to Adam. Send him an email. Check out his website. Check out his video series. And yeah, so without further ado, here's Adam.
Thank you. So you actually are a repat yourself.
I am. I've tried to repatriate 3 times.
Okay.
Twice was unsuccessful.
All right.
And so I went to Korea in 2000, came back in 2001, went back over in 2003, came back to Canada in 2004, and then came back to Korea in 2004 and stayed there till 2006.
Right. Okay.
So, and the third time is the charm. So,
right. and so, what was the difference? The time that it stuck, do you think?
Finding the right job. To be honest, I was very miserable with my first 2 jobs. So when I came over in 2000, I was fresh out of university. Had a sociology degree, soft sciences, which a lot of English teachers have in Korea. And so in the end, I went back and I found that I couldn't get a teaching job or anything like that. So I ended up working just for a company as a management trainee, and I just happened to fit their right fold. They were looking for a recent graduate with some bit of work experience. Worked there for about a year and was completely miserable. There was an opportunity to go back to Korea, so I took it in a heartbeat. Worked in Korea again for a year, decided to give it another go, because I saw all my friends either get stuck in Korea, that they were gone for so long that their education or their skills became irrelevant, or they ended up marrying into the culture and they were going to stay in Korea. They open up their own hagwons or whatever it may be, and they decided to make a life in Korea. And neither of those kinds of I loved Korea. I think Korea is a wonderful place to be, but I didn't want to live there for the rest of my life.
Right.
And so went back to Canada again, and I ended up getting a sort of technical support job over the phone. Again, hated it. Got a call again, hey, you want to come back and do some curriculum development and things like that. Again, I wanted to stay for a year, but ended up meeting my future wife, who's Polish, and stayed for another additional year or so, 6 months. And then in 2006, really decided, okay, I gotta I got to make a real solid go at this.
Right.
But I truly didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think that's a lot of problems that expats have is a lot of teachers feel that they could do anything just because they can teach anything. Therefore, they feel that they can do anything.
Right.
And because they're so unfocused and they don't really know what they want to do, it's very difficult for them to find a job. So they sort of, go very broad and general without having a lot of focus, and either can't find a job or get mediocre jobs, and they're miserable and are not happy. And they were very happy in Korea. They were superstars. They were liked. Life was, I would argue, much easier in Korea as a foreigner. Usually your apartment's paid for. You don't pay for any kind of insurances, 4% on taxes and that sort of thing, right? So when you're stuck at, you don't get paid lots, but you're able to save 75%, 65% of your income. And so it's really appealing. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people either fail to repatriate or end up going back, is that they're miserable where they are and they just want to be happy, and Korea made them happy, so they go back.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I mean, that's my situation. I've got frankly, a really great job, and for starting a family, it's been amazing. It's been absolutely amazing to be able to have my job where I have. I'm in the university system, so I have the 5 months.
You're the top tier there for English teachers.
Right. And we get for the free daycare as well, free or nearly free. It might as well be free.
I pay $1,200 a month for one child.
Yeah. And so it's really tough, and it's we've made the decision that we want to. Want our kids to grow up in the U.S. around family and things like that, because they don't have that here. And but just about every day you kind of question that. We question that. It's like, well, really? Because this is pretty sweet. We got sweat up here. All right. Yeah. Thank you again.
Timing's another thing. Like one of the things right now, it's a global recession to certain degrees with the oil crash and stuff like that. Right now is not the best time to come back home, right? Like in Canada right now, traditionally Alberta has had a 3% unemployment rate. Right now it's at 8%, the highest it has seen in over 2 decades. And so, people who are thinking, hey, it's time to come back to Canada, specifically to Alberta, this is the worst time to come back. So, whether you do a midnight run or, extend it for 6 months, sign a 1-year contract, but really want to stay for 6 months, that sort of thing. It's really stuff that I never thought about when I came back. It never occurred to me what kind of, where the economy was, where my country of origin's economy was, how the global big picture was. It just didn't occur to me. I was like, I just want to go home. And you do really got to think about, you want to go when the market's hot, not when the market's cold. And the market's really cold right now.
Okay. Well, there are, a few people in the group that are moving pretty soon. But I think for a lot of people, it is kind of a long-term view. And there are a lot of people I know that joined the group and sent me a message and said, I would love to go back home, but it just kind of seems impossible right now. So I'm curious what I can learn from the group.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, like, for those kind of people, or even for people that it's a 2, 3, 5 year goal, if there are some, what are the skills that they should be looking into? What kind of things can they, kind of general office skills type of stuff, you think they could pick up that could, help them along? Or
well, there's no magic skill set that, if I have this skill set, I'm going to get a job, because it's very job specific. And that's why one of the things they really have to home in and understand and kind of dedicate themselves to is what kind of job or what type of profession do you want? If you're kind of, I want a general office job, the problem with that is there are tons of nationals right now in your home state or home province that you're competing against. And one of the questions that was on Facebook is, if I'm applying from overseas back to my home country, am I SOL? And the real answer is yes. But what I always tell people whenever they say something's unfair or our employer should do this, I always tell them, think of yourself as a company or organization or a boss. Say you make, at the end of the year, you make $80,000 a year to be able to take home. You're running your own business. So now you have to hire somebody. And to hire somebody, you're going to pay $40,000. So you've just cut half of your profits. Are you going to hire somebody who currently, let's say you're looking for a web developer? Are you going to look for somebody who's currently in web developing, or who did web developing 5 or 6 years ago? That's an easy answer. Like, especially when you're thinking about it as your own business, right? Or when you're sort of looking at 2 candidates, and one candidate already is established, they have a home, they have a mortgage, their family is here, and you have a second candidate who's overseas, you're not sure when they're going to come over, they're going to come over as soon as they get a job. Who are you going to pick? You're going to pick the local guy who's applying, right? And so it is very difficult, and I found that myself. When I was applying, because I am like, okay, 6 months before my contract's up, I'm going to start applying for jobs. In 6 months, I got 0 replies. And it was because, hi, my name is Adam. I'm currently in Korea, but coming back home, you know, August 2006. I'm available for an interview that week. You know, no one's thinking about 6 months ahead of time. Oh, okay, let's keep a spot open for Adam. Because he's coming into the country, right? So it's one of those things that what you can do right now, and what I wish I would have told myself is, if you want to go into back home into the teaching profession, do an online master's right now, right? There's plenty of like online used to be a dirty, oh, if you got an online degree, it's not a real degree, right? That has very much changed because there's a lot of reputable universities that offer online programs, blended programs, whatever it may be. So I'm not sure how it is in Canada, or sorry, in the US, but in Canada, if you have a master's in education, a BA is not going to cut it, right? So if you have a master's in education, the chances of you getting a teaching position at a university or a school, or getting hired as a substitute teacher, increase your chances is much greater than coming back and saying, hey, I have a BA and I've taught a couple years overseas teaching English. So one of the things that they can do is do an online master's program, getting them that educate from a university in their home state or their home province. That's going to be recognizable, right? If they do like Phoenix University, which is pretty much just a degree, sort of windmill, here you go, doesn't matter. No one's going to take that seriously. So I've had I've had 3 friends who actually did master's degree in Korea. And then when they came over back home, they got real teaching positions in schools, high schools, junior high schools, and universities. The other thing that I would recommend is look in your home state or your province, and there's lots of sort of research out there of what are the hot jobs coming up, what are the big shortages, and do certificates or programs online based on those. So, you know, if web design or networking support or digital video production or that sort of thing is a hot job in your area, do that, because a lot of people have this have been sold this false goods of follow your passion, right? Or do what you love doing. You should like what you like doing, you know, but there's a lot of things that I love doing that I really suck at. And I shouldn't be doing for a job. You know, you have these people that want to be singers or want to be actors, and really, that's great. go and volunteer at your local theater, sort of community theater. Go sing your heart out at karaoke bars, whatever it may be. But that's not going to pay you the bills, right? Trades is another sort of big thing. Not sure how you could get the trade skill set, but electricians, plumbers, those jobs, you know, it used to be that only stupid people went into the trades.
Right.
It's not, you need to have computer skills, math skills, and a whole bunch of other analytical skills in order to be in the trades right now. Right now, our mechanics, they plug in a laptop into the computer, which does a diagnostic, a troubleshooting tree, and then they, based on those codes, they repair the trucks, right? So looking as an option into the trades is, it's really needed both in North America and in Canada.
Is age an issue for getting into the trade?
So age isn't an issue. In the trades, I wouldn't say it's an issue until you're about 45 or 50, right? So I'm going to be honest with you, ageism, sexism, racism, it exists. What I would argue is it exists a lot less in North America than it does anywhere else. You know yourself that if you marry the wrong type of Asian in Korea, your family can disown you, they don't want to talk to you. Even yourself being married to a Korean, not everyone in that family accepts you. Not everyone accepts that relationship, right? Now, that also exists back home, but not to that degree. You're not going to get your car keyed because you bought the wrong type of car. You're not going to get ostracized from half of your family because somebody. So it exists, but not to that high degree. And so what the magic sort of age group, in my opinion, is 25 to about 55. It's about 30-year gap where you really have the ability to build up your career. Once you get past 55, ageism really starts sort of kicking in of, well, they're close to retirement, you can't teach your dog new tricks, and that sort of thing. So it gets a little bit challenging past 55, and 60, 65, the ageism is really exponential. But, you know, 25 to 55 is that golden age where age isn't a factor.
Okay, good. All right, well, I pulled up our list of questions now, and I'm just going to go to the top. And, you know, thank you, Emmanuel, for contributing
all of the questions.
90% of questions, maybe 95%, yeah. So he started off mentioning the resume keyword screening programs. I think he's talking about the ASTs, right?
Yeah, applicant tracking systems.
And I have to mention, before you get started on that, I have to really thank you specifically because you brought JobScan onto all our radars. And that has been really a revelation for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But what, you know, if you're watching this and you're not familiar with JobScan, it basically helps you to optimize your resume for these, they call them applicant tracking systems, that you know, run algorithms to analyze how well your resume matches the job announcement or the job description. So would you say that's a fair description, Adam?
To simplify, it pulls the keywords from the job ad to your resume and sees how many keywords match.
Okay. And so JobScan was developed seemingly as a response to these ATSs that have become common practice. Right?
So I would say the ATSs are not as common as people might think, because they are quite expensive, and really a company has to get thousands and thousands of resumes in order for that to actually make sense to a certain degree. Recruiting companies use them as a sort of data bank and that sort of thing. And the question was like, can I get my hands on one, look at it, see? And the answer is really no. Right. The closest thing you're going to get to is jobscan.co to get the sort of feel of it. But in the background of it, fundamentally, they all work the same way. What happens is you type in a key search term, and then let's say I'm looking for sales and marketing experience. It's going to then go into the data bank and say, do you have sales or marketing experience? The other kind of applicant tracking system that's going to be is they're going to have automatic questions for you. So do you have 5 years experience in this? Do you have a degree in this? Do you have this license or this qualification? What I would say to that is, at any time, as soon as you hit no to an answer that's pre-populated, you've pretty much disqualified yourself, because there are going to be candidates that are going to answer 5 for 5 questions, and they're going to be looking at those candidates first, right? And so my only sort of advice to that is, unless your answer is yes, 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 yes to all 5 pre-populated questions, chances are as soon as you hit one no, your chances of getting a call back are very slim, right? Most places will, and I use this in my video, if it says click apply here, you're uploading your resume, you're filling out sort of your experiences and that sort of thing, chances are it's some kind of hybrid applicant tracking system, or it's just a way to standardize your resume. And then if it's at or Adam at Great West Kenworth or whatever it may be, it's usually a person. If it's an email, it's a person. If it's uploading or apply here, it's an applicant tracking system. But there is no magic formula other than ensuring that all those keywords that are in a job ad are in your resume. And you got to understand that recruiters spend 3 to 10 seconds looking at a resume. When I'm looking at resumes, I can literally tell you in a second whether I'm spending more or less time with that person, right? And so it really does matter. And think of it as you're hiring for your own personal business, and you're looking for a sales guy, right? So you're looking for you want somebody to grow your business. You're looking for a sales guy. And your business is in oranges. So when you're looking at somebody that you want to hire, are you going to be looking, are you going to give priority to guys who've sold oranges before? Or are you going to hire a guy who's sold MacBooks before? You're not going to hire the MacBook guy, right? So it's very also key that you're applying to jobs that you have previous experience for. If you're sort of sending your resumes out blank and you don't have the experience, you've never done the job, chances are you're not going to get a call back.
And I don't remember if it was one of your videos or another video I watched that recommended, as you're looking at these different job announcements that you're wanting to apply for, and picking out the keywords, work those into your social media profiles as well, your LinkedIn and even maybe your Twitter, and because apparently there are aggregators of some sort that some people use that will ignoring job applications, but kind of scan the social media sites to try to find candidates that way, and not just LinkedIn but also Facebook.
I would say that's a large minority that do that. I've yet to hear somebody get a job via their Twitter account, their Facebook account. I definitely by LinkedIn, but other social media, Google Plus. Come on, who's on Google Plus? The chances are very, very slim. So I would say, the 20-80 rule that 20% of your activities are really 80% of your outcomes. I would say that you should focus on your LinkedIn and really not worry that much about your Facebook. For me personally, I think Facebook is a very personal area. I only have my friends and family. I don't mix business there. I use Twitter for business, but I don't, and LinkedIn, but I don't use Facebook for business. But my business posts on Facebook for job ads and for announcements and that sort of thing.
Now, in terms of, when I start, actually, I'll say one of my reasons for starting the Repat Network group was that when I would, pull up my resume and be like, okay, I'm going to rewrite my resume, make it look really good. Let me go online and find some good sources. I didn't know what was good and what was crap, it's really easy to find people with opinions on how you should do a resume.
Yeah.
So maybe if you could give some, particularly good resources you like, or just even, help you to know how to know if a person knows what they're talking about on that stuff.
On that. So there is no quick fix and no magic bullet, right? If somebody's telling you do this one thing and you will have success, they're selling you snake oil, right? Ultimately, the one true one thing that you can truly do is continue build your network. And one of the things that expats do very poorly is when they move from North America to, say, Southeast Asia, Korea, they start building their network in Korea, and they have a very strong network, but they forget about their North American counterparts. And what ends up happening is those people go on without them and forget about them, right? Unless that person reaches out, connects, stays in contact with them, out of sight, out of mind. And so one of the things that it's important for expats to have these groups and these support groups and these resource groups, but they're again in a comfort zone of these are people with my same issues, my same problems. And what they have to really do is go out of their comfort zone and start reaching out back and building those networks overseas. And social media allows that to do that. Social media, for the first time, has made it okay to talk to strangers, right? So you can reach out to a person in your state that you've never met before and just say, hey, I'm Steven. I'm currently in Korea. I'm planning to come back home in a couple of years. I'm building up my network here. Do you mind if we connect? Right? Chances are when you start with that kind of introduction, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes to you. But if you go, hi, I'd like to add you to my professional network, and they go, Steve from Korea, who the hell is that? No, thank you. So there is no tried and true. I can tell you, if you've had the right previous job and the previous experience, it doesn't matter how bad your resume looks, right? It really matters of the content matters rather than presentation. I can show you beautiful resumes that, like, even in my video, I show the most beautiful resume I have ever seen a mechanic ever send me. It's been 6 years. I still talk about this resume, but I would never hire him because he doesn't have the skills and aptitude for the mechanic's job. He was a graphics designer with an IT background, and he wanted to get into mechanics. There was nothing on his resume that showed an interest in mechanics, hobbies in mechanics, past experience in mechanics. He was, and people who are doing career transitions, so they're going from one, for example, being a teacher to X, you will never get that opportunity just by applying, because everyone's going to look at your resume and go, they have absolutely no sales experience. They have absolutely no technical. All they have is teaching experience. This is a teacher. Why is a teacher applying for X? But your network, people that know you, it's all about risk, right? And so people don't hire anymore the best talent. People hire the least risky talent, right? And the least risky talent is a referral of a friend, or an acquaintance, or an opportunity that somebody has already worked with. Hey, I've worked with Steven overseas. He's a great guy. He's coming over. We should give him a chance. You're going to get a much higher return rate on that than you are. Like, applying online should be one of your strategies. It shouldn't be the only strategy. So if you're sitting down and you're just applying, that's not going to give you anything. Only about, I would say there's a 1 to 10% success rate on that. That's not to say it's impossible, but I'm saying it's a small percentage compared to word of mouth, referrals, and your internal network. And companies usually prefer to hire internal candidates first. If there's no one that they can hire internally or promote internally, that's when they go to an external source.
Right. Okay. Now, are there any differences between how things are done in the U.S. versus Canada? Well,
in spirit, I would say no. Like the cultures are so similar. I would say Canada is a little bit more socialistic, so it's harder to fire a person.
Right.
It's harder to discriminate and fire a person for disabilities, mat leave, that sort of thing. The U.S. has a at-will law which says I can fire you for whatever I want.
Right.
The only thing that in the U.S. that protects a worker is age. You can't fire a worker based on age. So when there's a mass layoff, the company has to provide a list with ages of those employees. And let's say, 75% of all those workers are 65 plus.
Right.
They can't do that, right? But there's nothing prevent. So I have a couple of friends that work in the U.S. that hiring, the keywords, the resume, the interview techniques, there isn't anything culturally different that you're like, that's an American style or that's a Canadian style. And you'll see that on YouTube. The advice that is given isn't that different. There isn't anything extreme or sort of head scratching. I would argue that even in the UK, there isn't. And you can tell when a Southeast Asian applies because there's a picture, there's their religion, there's their age, and that sort of thing. So I would say there's a much more difference between Asia and North America than there is between North America and Canada or the U.S. and Canada.
Okay. Now, if you're looking at a job application and you've got all the right soft skills that they're looking for, but you've only got one or two of the hard skills, is it worth even bothering? No.
So I would always say always apply. Okay. Right? It's like playing the lottery. You'll never win the lottery if you don't apply. So my answer is apply to everything. Right. However, don't be disappointed when you don't get that callback. So again, think of it this way: you are hiring somebody for your company, and you are looking for a give me a position that you would be hiring for.
A widget engineer.
A widget engineer. Okay, and so. With this widget engineer, that person would be using specific software with a specific computer system, right? And so you have one applicant who's actually used that system with that software. You have another applicant that hasn't, but has attention to detail, emotional intelligence, cultural sensitivity, leadership skills. Managers and supervisors don't want to train people. What they're looking for is that magical, and you use this in your article, and I smiled because it's my favorite term. They're looking for a unicorn, a mystical, magical creature that doesn't exist. Right. And so, but when we have this confirmation bias or this recency bias that, or frequency bias that we're looking at, I want this person with that skill that's difficult to train, or that person's done that job, and they will pick that person over somebody with softer skills. Even though softer skills are harder to train and develop, people go for the easy one with the technical. So I would argue it's, let's say you have two applicants. One applicant has 3 hard skills. The other applicant has 5 out of 5 skills. And then you switch around that the other applicant has 5 out of 5 soft skills, and this applicant has 2 hard, soft skills. You're still going with the one with the technical.
Okay, I see. Right. And how do an area I know nothing about? I've never worked with them or anything, but these like staffing agencies, getting on board with a staffing agency, getting temp work. That a lot of people do it to try to move into something full time after a certain amount of time. Is that a good way to go, or?
So it's a strategy. It's a good strategy, okay? But don't feel you now have a personal assistant that's looking for a job for you. That is absolutely not what's happening. So staffing agencies are really good when you have a skill that very few people have. So you have a technical skill, you have software, you've worked with a program. There's only 5 people in the world that have this program. A recruiter is the one for you, right? But a general office staff, right? No, so the way recruiting companies work is on a sort of two. They either work on a flat rate, so give me $3,000 and I will pass you candidates,
Right.
or they take a percentage, and that percentage is anywhere between 10 to 20% of that annual salary. So let's say you have an office job for $50,000. Well, somebody is going to be paying, $5,000 to $10,000 to place an office work. That's not going to happen, right? It's at higher end technical jobs, 80,000 jobs that are in short demand. But temp agencies are great for temp work. They're great for these one or two. It's great for networking. You get additional skills, that sort of thing. What I would warn is you always say yes to any job that they ask, because as soon as you say no, they'll never call you again, right? Because what's happening is they have a client on the other end and said, Susie didn't show up for work. I need somebody right now. So if you are a recruiting agency, are you going to call up Steven, who has said yes to you 5 out of 5 times to the crappiest jobs ever? Or are you going to call Billy, who's said no to you? You're going to go to the yes guy. Right? And so never ever say no to a temp agency, no matter what the job. Oh, I don't want it. That conflicts with me going to on a long weekend camping trip or whatever. Always say yes. It's a strategy, but don't think that just because you've been interviewed by a recruiter that in the next week or two you're going to get a job into it. Use temp agencies to get additional skills and to network. And to sort of keep yourself busy, and apply to all the temp agencies around town, but don't expect it to be a way of you actually landing your job.
It sounds like interacting with that temp agency should really, even once you're accepted and you're hired and you're getting work, you should maybe consider it, part of your long-term strategy as well. Just like if you were an intern or something and, the boss asked you to do something, you wouldn't say no, right?
Absolutely.
You're trying to get that full-time offer.
And the way I broke in my third time around was I was stubborn and I was an idiot. And for 6 months, I got into my head that I would get into HR, and I said no to a whole bunch of temp agencies that wasn't HR-ish enough. And then after 6 months, I got really desperate, and finally I called up a friend who ran a staffing agency and said, I'll take anything while you're shoveling cement tomorrow. And I was going to say no, but I'm like, I need the money. So sure enough. So that cement job led to, hey, we don't have any HR stuff, but do you want to look at 3,000 resumes and help us sort those resumes? After looking at 3,000 resumes, I learned what a good resume, what a bad resume was. So you just never know what that temp agency is going to lead to. But as soon as you say no, you close that door. So you always say yes to anything and everything.
Now, stepping back a little bit again, talking about social media. Like if you're on social media and you are a widget engineer, right, or maybe even making a career transition into widget engineering, and you've got your LinkedIn, you've got your Twitter, and maybe even Facebook, and it's all pointing widget engineer, widget engineer, widget engineer. But then you have your personal website online also, and it's all about Pokemon Go. And it's your hobby website about Pokemon Go. Is that going to work against you?
So the answer is yes and no, and it all depends on the content, right? So if, for example, your personal hobby has something to do with, swingers or, the sort of role playing in different areas or something that might be considered taboo.
S&M or something.
I would say that would hurt you, right? Or you are doing something that's competing against the current company that you're applying for. So you have a side business or a hobby that's in direct competition. So you're a web designer. You have your own business in web design for designing websites, and you're applying to a company to be their web designer as well. That's a conflict of interest, right?
Okay.
And so hobbies really depend. And I think one of the questions was, if I was into robots and I competed over the weekend and I won thousands of dollars, would that be a mark against me? And the answer would be no. That would not be something that would be held against you. That you're a bike enthusiast. You play hockey. Companies do like people that are active, that are into sports, that show creativity. Technically, I don't know how it is in the States, but in Canada, it's sort of frowned upon or a taboo for recruiters to be checking out your social media and that sort of thing. In all honesty, if it's in the public realm, it's in the public realm, so it's free game. You just should be very much aware that whatever you post publicly, ultimately people will judge you on that. Right. And so if you are concerned about a specific material reflecting about you negatively, or you think that's going to hurt your career aspects, don't post it. Like if you look at my web presence, it's very much HR related. You won't find any pictures of me, drinking, being in a bar, doing selfies. You would be hard pressed to find anything about my private life in the social media or public space, but you'll find a lot of professional stuff. Okay. And that's all a strategy just to keep people at the top of mind. So if there's a talk or somebody thinks I might be a good fit for something, it's been a strategy that's been very successful for me. That it's just keeping people on top of mind. So the answer is, it all depends on what that hobby is.
Right. Okay. And what about when they want to know your employment history? Okay. I know if it's like government jobs and things, they really want to know every single job that you've had. But for applications for other companies and things, do you leave off the irrelevant stuff?
So you don't want to have any holes, right? So you don't want to sort of. I did nothing between 2000 and 2003, although you did something, but it wasn't relevant to the job that you were applying for. The most recent job is the most important job, and so it's kind of that's why it's so difficult to change careers, because they're looking at, well, you're a baker. Why do you want to be a journalist, right? And so, rule of thumb is the last 10 years is acceptable, or the last 3 jobs. So if you've held, in the last 15 or 20 years, you've only had 3 jobs, well, you're going to list those 3 jobs because you want to show, because people, there's no winning. People discriminate against everything. People will discriminate you if you've been in a job not enough, and they'll discriminate against you if you've been in a job too long. Right. I've heard one recruiter say that if you're in a job for longer than 7 years, you're committing career suicide. That you should be moving every 7 years somewhere else, because people do. It's like, you've been doing this job for 20 years. You don't know anything else. You might, but it's an automatic thing. No, I want somebody that has variety, that's worked in different companies and that sort of thing. So rule of thumb is 10 years, but if it doesn't hurt you, put it in there.
And then references. If they ask you to submit references, what's a good, should they all be 100% work references, or have one character reference in there, or maybe one that's a mix? Or
okay, so again, I go back to, you're hiring, you're the boss, okay? Do you want to know the opinion of the last boss or the last supervisor, or do you want to know the community priest who says, yeah, they're a good participant, they donate 10%, and they you want to know what kind of person that was working for. And so you definitely want to provide your supervisors. Worst case scenario, if there's a reason. Now, there's an understanding, if you're currently employed, you don't want to provide your direct supervisor. At that point, you should be able to at least provide a coworker who can sort of vouch for you in that aspect. But then you should definitely be able to provide your second previous job as a direct supervisor. When I have candidates who cannot provide me with one single previous manager or supervisor, they're hiding something, right? Why can't I talk to your last supervisor? And there's A, B, and C candidates, and so an A candidate will always find a way to find those references. B candidate will always, I'll try and C, and a C candidate goes, I don't know how to get a hold of them anymore, right? And so that C candidate, when somebody goes, I'm not even willing to try to find my last bosses for you, they automatically get defaulted because you're not even trying to find the references that I'm asking you to provide.
Okay. That actually makes me think of another topic, and I'll share personal information here. Like, I had a work experience not too long ago where it was a horrible work experience, and there's the aspect of you don't want to say anything negative about a former employer and all this. I don't know. I feel I grew a lot and I learned so much out of that experience as well. So, what's the balance there? Do you avoid it and like try not to talk that much about it, or do you say, well, I had a really challenging work environment in the past. It was a lot of pressure, and kind of frame it in the right way so you can pull out your lessons you learned from it.
Right. So I would always say that you never ever want to criticize publicly. So you don't want to post it on social media. You don't want to be on any forum or that sort of thing saying, these people are corrupt, stay away from them. Because you got to understand that another person reading from it doesn't know whether they're reading from a angry employee that got fired or whether somebody who truly experienced a negative. So, and unfortunately, humans go to the negative before the positive. No one goes, oh, he must have been a real honest poor soul that got shafted. No, they go, holy, that guy's wacko, right? But in the interview process, what you do is you try to spin it as in the most positive way. It's like it was a very unpleasant experience. I learned a lot. These are the kind of lessons that came out of it, and I'm looking forward to further challenges. There isn't a lot. You don't have. I wouldn't go into a lot of great detail. I would be honest with that, with the questions that are sort of given, but always leaving it as as you put it, what you learned from it, what the positive outcomes were from it, rather than I've been scarred for life and I never want to work with anyone that is affiliated with sort of X.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the reality is it was like 9 months. It was a less than a year contract, but it was maybe my most important work experience. To be honest, in terms of what I learned.
Your worst jobs are usually the ones that you learn the most on.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we've covered all the questions now. Actually, I don't want to take up too much of your time, and we've been going for about an hour now.
Yeah.
And I've had problems actually with getting Skype getting cut off after about an hour in the past. So I think we can kind of wrap this up. Anything else you wanted to? Any advice you want to give to our repats that want to follow in your path?
Getting a job overseas is really tough, and I would argue that getting a job in Southeast Asia while in Canada is much easier than vice versa, right? Because the demand is there, right? And what sort of people forget is that that reverse doesn't work the same. There's a lot more people back home competing for the same jobs than the other way around. And I guess that's where the disillusion or disconnect is, that, hey, I don't understand. It was so easy for me to get a job here, to develop my network, to get a career. I should be able to do the same thing and replicate it back home. But the rules are different. The demands are different. Your skill sets are much different. You have a very specific, what's the skill set of an English teacher that's required? To speak English, right? That's really, to get your foot in the door in any Hagwon, That's the only requirement, a BA, and to be able to speak English. And the chances are, especially if it's a bad Hagwon, they'll take anyone and everyone because their midnight runs are so high.
Right.
And so use the time in Korea to develop skills. Don't get comfortable. Use the time in Korea to network both in Korea, because your expats are going to go abroad. They're going to go back home. They're going to, you know, I've had expats that open up their own restaurants, started teaching, created their own sort of camps back home for Korean students and that sort of thing. I've had expats go into sales, healthcare, and don't be afraid or adverse to re-education. So get those certificates, get that master's degree, do online training. You know, lynda.com has programs on Adobe, Photoshop, whatever it may be, Microsoft, Excel. People need technical skills. The soft skills are very important, but it's the technical skills that are going to that are going to sort of bring you bring attention to your resume. Your format of your resume isn't as important as the content. And so making sure, using jobscan.co, making sure that those keywords are in there in that resume, and don't have one single strategy, which is online application, as your only source of applying. Use this time to connect with people in LinkedIn, and like what we're doing right now. A person they don't have to have a Facebook group. They can actually, hey, I'm coming, go onto LinkedIn, find somebody with a career that you're interested in, and say, hey, can we Skype over? I just have a couple of questions. How did you get into your career? What are the kind of things that you would recommend? What kind of online training or what kind of courses could I take? That sort of thing. Use the time in Korea to build up your skill set, because unless you want to be an English teacher back home, there isn't additional skill sets that you're learning that's going to give you a leg up from the competition. So you have to generate and create and motivate and initiate those skills that you want, and do research. Do research on what is needed in your state that you want to go back in, not what you want to do. Because those two things can be very different, and you'll be very disappointed, because a lot of people want to do a lot of fun things, and they don't want to do the hard, difficult, not so glamorous jobs. And you should be going in where there's demand, not what you want to do.
Okay, awesome.
Once you get established, by all means, follow your passion. But the hardest part is getting that first job. Once you get that first job and you get established, it's much easier to sort of go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Okay, I think there's I recently met somebody attached to the U.S. Embassy, and he was a diplomat, but his specialty was in these educational programs related with career development. And he was actually a former professor. He had a PhD in psychology and ran the career development office of his university. And I took the chance to ask him. I said, what do you recommend for, Americans that are living in Korea and they want to go back to the U.S.? Get a job, try to get a job while they're in Korea, or, move first and then try to get a job. And he kind of looked at me and was like, well, why would you get a job after you move? Of course you want to try to get a job before you make the move. But I think he's kind of in a whole other world. He's thinking executive level, like, now that I've had some distance from that conversation, he was a really nice guy, and the way he put it was much nicer than what I just said.
And I would recommend the same thing. You never want to go, I'm very cautious of people who quit and then try to find another job. Usually you try to find another job and then quit. That looks for foresight and planning, right? Somebody who quits and then looks for a job, that's, for me, they made an emotional decision. They got pissed off that day. I'm done. I'm quitting, whatever it may be. But the reality is it's very difficult, especially across the sea, to get that job. And, well, I'm coming in a month. Well, I don't know what my requirements needs. I need somebody now, right? And so I give this example in a video. If you at least want to have bites or anything like that, put in your resume your home state without the address, but the zip code, the city, and the home state, and submit your application that way. Sort of your actual address where you live has become sort of a slight privacy issue. And that sort of thing. So it's not uncommon for people, especially women, not to put their addresses publicly in, just a sort of a vague general idea on it, just for their own protection. And you get a lot more responses because, again, you're looking at a candidate, you want somebody that's in your home city, and you see Korea. And you're like, I'm not bringing you over, even though you're like, no, I'm moving, I'm paying, but my whole thing is like, I don't want somebody from Korea to be, or I want somebody from my home city, right? Unless your skill set is so unique, so special, you're that one single unique snowflake that there isn't anyone else that can do that. Yes. But those, again, that's the 1% or the 5%. They're in that unique position that they'll get hired as soon as they show their credentials, their skill set, their resume, they'll get hired on the spot because their technical skills are so needed. But for the majority of average Joe like myself, it hurts you because it's like you're competing with people with the same level of skill sets, with the same technical and soft skills, and they have an advantage over you. They're already there. They're established. They're not trying to move. And so one of the things that I would recommend is, scoping out the temp jobs, working for day pay, whatever it may be. There's a corner where people come in and pick people for the day and that sort of thing. Be aware of how you can generate money quickly so you're not dipping into your savings. Because I've heard, like, I used up all my savings in 6 months. Right? I came in, I bought a vehicle so I could get around, and within 6 months I was broke and used up all my savings. Hence why I actually had to do temp work, where what I should have been doing temp work from day one.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and I don't know. Would you say that maybe, if you're looking at retraining and making a career transition, if the issue is lack of planning, right? If that's the thing that bothers a hiring manager, if they're looking at somebody that just quit their job and then looking for a new job, can you show that planning? Can you make up for that with, by producing a portfolio or over time, of course? As you go through the retraining process, maybe taking online courses, you're blogging about it and showing what you're doing, and
so I would say that emotional quitting and looking for a job is very local. I don't think no one's going to bat an eye. It's like, well, why did you quit? You were in Korea and now you're in North America. No one's going to go, well, that was an emotional decision, right? As soon as when you see on a resume, Korea, and you see an address of your home state, that person's automatically making a connection. This person has now moved back home, right? And your cover letter says, I have moved back home. Right. So there isn't a lot of sort of guesswork on that. There's contract work, and what you try to do is you try to paint as much of a story to your cover letter and your resume. More of your resume than your cover letter. Because only about 30% of people actually read the resume. No recruiter, your cover letter, no recruiter is going to read a cover letter. Because think about it, they have 100 resumes to go through. They're not going to spend 5 minutes looking at a beautiful cover letter where they can look at a resume for a second and tell you whether you're interested or not. And if you get past the resume, they might look at your cover letter. Hiring managers, or when you're up to that interviewing stage, or the hiring managers picking who they should interview or who they should hire, the cover letter at that point makes a difference. But from the initial screening process, it doesn't make a lot of difference. You have a much higher rate of having a better resume showing the skills to the job that you're applying for than a beautiful, sad story of overcoming challenges and disabilities and saving the princess, and that's why you want to work for this company, than a strong resume.
Okay. Adam, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I don't think I said that at the beginning. It should have been the first words out of my mouth. Thank
Not
you
at all.
so much for doing this. It's going to be so helpful to so many people. I know that.
So if anyone does have any questions after this, by all means, put them in the Facebook comments. I'll try to answer them as best as I can slowly. I'll in the Facebook feed, there's also the website where I provide the web series. You can ask questions there or email me at adam@talenttactics.ca and give me a couple of days to respond, but eventually I will respond.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
And just so you sort of touched on this at the beginning. There's lots of advice here, and what I'm saying isn't the gospel.
Right.
It's not the truth.
Right.
Some of the stuff that I said is personal opinion. Other stuff is sort of general knowledge or consensus. When I say most, I don't mean 51%. I mean a large group of individuals. And so anytime you hear advice, if it makes sense to you, or it's like, oh, I didn't think about it this way, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Well, take it, have a critical eye on it, but don't take anything that I said at face value.
Right.
Vet it, criticize it. Well, I don't think it's true. Fine. Find evidence to the contrary or whatever it may be, but be critical about it. There's lots of opinion out there, but the one thing I can tell you is there's no magic bullet. There's a myth of that perfect resume. It doesn't exist. It really is a personal choice of like cars and movies and books. You know, people have different choices, and a big part of it is luck. A really big part of it is luck, being at the right place at the right time with the right people. Because, you know, you can come into a hot market and that's lucky, and you can come into a cold market and it's bad luck. There's nothing that you can do to control that. But a little foresight, a little bit of thinking, a little bit of planning, and what the group is doing is gathering knowledge, dissecting it, analyzing it. Yeah, I like this, I don't like this. But for those people that are looking for the holy grail, the one answer, the one true thing that's going to set them straight doesn't exist. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of networking. It's a lot of re-education, and it's a lot of planning. And it sounds like you yourself have a really good grasp of it, and that you're in the right direction. And my sort of kudos to you. You've done an amazing job. I just keep on plugging it because you're not getting thanks enough. And sometimes it's demotivating, and you might be asking yourself, why am I doing this? Right? But in the end, you got to remember, you're doing this for your family. And you want them to be successful and to be happy. But you got to remember, if you're not happy, you're making your family miserable. Right? And so your happiness matters to you. You can't be sacrificing all your time and energy to try to make somebody else happy. You got to be happy first.
That's a good point. I had actually never thought about that, and that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I've always kind of thought, I could shovel concrete. I've done that before, actually. I could do that again if it keeps my girls in school and get to play with their friends and their cousins. And but that's a good point. Yeah,
and because if you're miserable, you're going to come home miserable, and you're going to make your family miserable, right? And it's one of the things that it's. But you don't have to love what you're doing. You just can't be miserable doing it, right? So there's that fine line. You're not looking for bliss. You're just looking for not to be miserable and to sort of enjoy your day, enjoy the people that you're working with. And it really has to do with your attitude. You can be the happiest shovel concreter there is, but it's your choice to have that positive attitude, right? And the moment you start doubting yourself, you start criticizing yourself, you start feeling down about yourself, it's a losing battle because it's a cyclical kind of thing. And you can fool yourself. If you think you're happy and you force yourself to be happy, your body thinks, hey, I think I'm happy, right? And it works both ways. So you can sort of self-motivate yourself. Just make sure you continue networking, and it's a dirty word, talk to as many people as possible. That's really, it shouldn't be called networking. It should be talking to people. And talk to as many people as possible in your home state, right? Those are the people, those are the connections, those are the relationships that you truly want to build right now, because those are the individuals that eventually are going to be interacting with you. Having a network in Korea is great and necessary for your success, but now you got to split your attention to two sort of geographical regions and building those networks on those two regions.
Okay. I think that's a great closing note. Thanks again so much, and hopefully you won't get too flooded by questions, because this is all great stuff that you're sharing.
All right.
It's really appreciated.
You're welcome. Have a good night, or good day.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again, Adam, for that amazing interview with all that great information. And I wanted to actually take a minute to show some of his website. And you can see here our new set of domains. As always, this video was brought to you by Repatriate.Me. But I've also now set up repats.net to point to our Facebook group. So if you want to recommend it to anybody, recommend the group to anybody, you can just tell them that. And repats.pw for the LinkedIn group as well. And we need to start spending some time to build up that LinkedIn group a bit. Okay, so again, his website, it's talenttactics.ca, and you can see it's it really features his videos here, right? And you can click here to go to the YouTube channel, directly to the YouTube channel, the Twitter, and the LinkedIn. But there's a lot of good information on all the various topics that Adam is knowledgeable about, as you can see here. And you can also, I wanted to show the Contact Us page in particular, right? The Contact Us. You can send a message through the Contact Us, or you've got his email address right here. Right? And then, of course, his videos, right? He's got some great videos. I really liked, where is it? Oh, actually, I don't see the one that's my favorite that I've seen. But his one telling the story of being in Korea is particularly informative, because it shows how he took what he took to be an unplanned kind of chaotic experience and turned it into something that really benefited his long-term career. I'll try and figure out which one that was and repost it back to the group, actually. So I'm sorry I'm not finding it here, but you can see there is a lot of content, a lot of free content that he's giving away here. Okay, so that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again for the next one, whenever that is. All right, bye.